Welcome to Conversation with Buddy. I'm your host, Buddy Puckett. Brought to you by Valor Mentoring, where we mentor and disciple men to be followers of Jesus, to love people, and to make an impact in the world. And today we're going to hear a great story from a guy I've gotten to know over the last maybe a year or so. And by the way, he made me a coffee today, so he's a coffee guy. As we head into fall, it's my favorite time of year. I remember growing up hunting with my dad and cousin and uncle, and I'm not sure why. I just love the fall, the cooler mornings, and so I'm really excited. But a good day always starts with a good cup of coffee, so let's just go with that. Without further ado, let me introduce you my friend George. Welcome, George. George Gulstrom.
Howdy.
How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here we are. We've been talking about this for a while, and here we are.
Yeah, I kind of threw myself at you.
Yeah, you know what? Good. Well, I probably invited you. It used to take you a while before you said yes, and then whatever. But you stuck to your promise. You made me a cup of coffee. Mm-hmm. So tell me about this coffee real quick.
It's Black Rifle Coffee. I wouldn't say I'm sponsored by Black Rifle Coffee. I'm powered by Black Rifle Coffee. It's one of their exclusive roasts for July. And yeah, I love coffee. I love being able to try different kinds of coffee, and I think I started drinking coffee when I was like 10. So
seriously,
it's a 20-year addiction.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say you're 30 then if it's 20 years. So.
Yeah, I'll be 31 next year, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like you. I mean, I grew up. My mom and dad drank Folgers coffee back in the day, man, straight out of the can, and I don't necessarily drink Folgers today. I would if I had to, but prefer not to. But like you, I grew up drinking coffee with my mom and dad, and I've always loved coffee. It's more of for you, is it different than just drinking coffee because you like it, or is it like a fellowship, or what is it?
I think it's like a process. I love the process of making coffee and being able to try different coffees from around the world. I don't stick to the same thing. I've, drank Folgers growing up. I've had U-Ban. I've drank Starbucks and Dutch Brothers and Pete's and Stumptown and Sisters, and I drank coffee from all over the place. I got coffee from the Florida Keys from a friend of ours, and I love just the coffee taste, the different flavors of coffee, the finding out where it's from, where it's grown. It's just really cool to see. Just like all the history and just how different coffee is. So
what is it about Black Rifle that you like? Because you're definitely a coffee connoisseur, and I like that. But what about Black Rifle? What is that about?
Well, I came across them, I think, in like 2017 and just like Facebook ads. And at the time, I was drinking Dutch Brothers like everybody else and, buying my $5 coffee every morning. And I think it was probably around 2018 is when I started buying their coffee, and they're a veteran-based company, and their goal is to employ veterans to produce America's coffee is a kind of their goal. And it's just they have a different profile of coffee, I think. You can get a dark roasted coffee without it tasting like it's been sitting in an ashtray or like it's been burnt. You can just there's a wide variety that they do. They support so many nonprofits. They're now a sponsor of UFC.
Come on.
I think they do some sponsors for like NASCAR or like Daytona 500 stuff. Yeah. And their goal is just to produce an amazing coffee. And they do that every single month with their exclusive coffee club. And then you can buy in bulk. You can buy like 5-pound bags. You can get canned coffee. I got my wife to drink their instant coffee.
Yeah.
And so I got her away from the, let's say, the cheap instant coffee. And so she drinks that. We have, subscription for that.
Totally. Well, it's funny. My wife and I were in 2023. We decided to take a trip in the South for like 20 days. It was kind of cool. We flew into New Orleans, and then we rented a car. And then for the next 20 days, we drove throughout the South. And so if you haven't done that before, I highly recommend it.
That sounds awesome.
But we were heading from Nashville, Tennessee, we were heading to Savannah, Georgia. I don't remember where it was at. In fact, wherever Dollywood is at. We were going through this little town. It's not a town, it's a city. It's where Dollywood is. And we decided we'd go there. But in that town was Black Rifle Coffee. I'm like, I like guns and I like coffee.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'd never heard of it. Isn't that funny? And so we go, I'm going to get coffee there, and there is a line like a mile long, and it was worth every penny.
Yeah.
So I'm in.
Yeah, it's super good. They started doing their outposts, like their coffee shops. The closest one they've got is in Kalispell, Montana.
Yeah.
Which I have still yet to go to. It's a 12-hour drive, so it's kind of
a cup of coffee. I'm down for that.
Yeah, it's kind of it would be a trek for a cup of coffee, but
yeah,
it would be super cool to go to one of those one day,
Well, hey, let me do a little introduction of you real quick, and then we're going to dive in. We'll talk more about coffee and just the morning routine, Jocko's protein mix that you drink up, because I do the same thing. So, okay, George Gulstrom, you are a child of God. We're going to dive into that and figure out what that means. I don't even know what that means, George.
Okay.
So, you were homeschooled. Your husband, how long have you guys been married?
Just over 7 years.
Yeah. And that's really the first step, is getting through 7 years. Like, cool.
Yeah, they say it's the first 5 years are the roughest.
Okay.
So that's what I've heard across the board.
Yeah. You are a father of how many children?
One child.
Yeah.
He's a little boy named Ivor, and he is 2 years and 2 months old.
Yeah.
He's I would say a firecracker, and he's just loves life.
He's all boy.
He's all boy.
Does he remind you of you or your wife, or a little bit of both?
I would say more me, because I grew up with no shoes on and just like in the country with my big family.
Yeah.
He looks a lot more like my wife. He's got really long blonde hair right now. We haven't cut his hair yet, and so it's huge. I keep putting it up into a little bun.
Yeah. It's a man bun going for
he hates it, but I do it anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so you're the third kid out of 7.
Yes, sir.
So from the top down, you're number 3.
Number 3.
Okay. You're a general contractor and small business owner.
Yes.
You kind of into coffee, which we've talked a little bit about. You like archery. You like shooting. You like to cook. I bet your wife likes that.
Yeah.
I added, as I got to know you a little bit, you have been a worship leader in the past. You've written songs.
Yeah.
And you were part of a punk rock band growing up.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go backwards here. When were you in the punk rock band? What years?
Oh shoot, that was 2010, 09, something like that.
Okay.
Our whole family grew up doing music. My parents have been in church ministry forever.
Yeah.
And so music has always been a part of our lives. And we all took piano lessons growing up. And then that transitioned into being a part of a homeschool group, music group called Sound Jubilee, where I played saxophone. I was in choir. And then from there, picked up my mom's guitar and started learning that. And then from there, learned bass guitar, which if anybody wants to learn bass guitar, it is a lot easier than just regular guitar. So I would suggest learning bass because I'm partial and I think it's cooler. You get no chicks. I don't know what they say, but bass doesn't get any chicks.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. Well, it's funny. I've been trying to work on this guitar thing for a few years. You're right. It is hard. So maybe I should also grab a bass and learn how to play that.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to worry about chords. It's just one note at a time. It's one string at a time.
Yeah.
Unless you want to do like punk rock and you're like trying to play bar chords, you like distort it and it's kind of grungy.
Okay. Interesting. Well, let's back up a little bit. Okay, so where did you grow up? Tell me about mom and dad, how they influenced who you are today. And I want to hear a little bit about your history.
Grew up in Mahama, Oregon, which is like...
Big city.
Yeah, big city of like 500 people, I think. Up the canyon, it's like 30 minutes east of Salem.
Okay.
Yeah, so you drive through it on your way to Detroit. There's like the Jean's Meat Market, which burned down in the fires.
Yeah.
There's the little gingerbread house.
Yep.
And the gas station. That's Mahama.
That's Mahama.
That's Mahama.
But that's where you take the road up to the North Fork.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny. I drive through there all the time, but I couldn't have exactly told you where Mahama was. So there's Lyons, and then there's Mahama.
Yeah, Lyons is on the south side of the river. Mahama's on the north side of the river.
Got it.
So
Good to know.
yeah.
Okay, so you grew up there. That's definitely a little bit more remote and probably where your love for guns and archery came in.
Yeah. We call it, it's podunk.
Yeah.
There's not a lot out there. Every cool thing that we thought was in Staten or Salem.
Yeah.
And even Staten's like still a podunk town. It's
Podunk.
just, it's tiny.
Yeah.
We grew up in the country and grew up shooting 22s, BB guns, pellet guns. There was a little creek that ran on the side of our property. So we had a little boat that we would ride down that, catching salamanders and frogs and making bows and all sorts of stuff in the woods. Spent a lot of time outside.
Sounds like a great childhood growing up. A lot more kids today should be outside having fun, but they're not.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's being outside growing up, and my mom had the dinner bell. So she'd be like, do not come back until you hear the bell. And even when we heard the bell, I mean, we'd be building forts and stuff. And once it started getting dark, then it's like, oh, crap, we got to get home. So.
Now, assume, is this all your siblings that you're with?
Yeah, siblings, neighbor kids.
Okay.
Yeah.
You rally the troops and... Okay, so how old is your oldest sibling from you?
Oldest sibling from me. He was born in 90, so 3 years older.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the second oldest?
That's the oldest.
That's the oldest. Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
So all of us are probably within 2 years to 18 months apart.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Your poor mother.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I always tell people my dad, he has 8 brothers and 5 sisters, so fairly big family.
Yeah. And
I grew up in Prineville. We call that Hickville. You call it Podunk. I call that Hickville.
Okay.
And so, like I said, I love the fall because, hunting. I grew up hunting, mostly deer hunting, some bird hunting, and almost no elk hunting until that was later on. But like you, grew up doing that sort of thing. Well, talk to me about, mom and dad and how they influenced you as you grew up.
Well, I think a big part of it is we've always been connected in church.
Okay.
Always been connected in church. The first church that I kind of remember was Bethany Baptist down in South Salem. And then from there, my parents helped start a church called New Life. I don't know if it's still around, but we were all living in Mahama and commuting out to South Salem to go to church. And then my parents found the Mahama church, which was like 2 miles from our house, and went there on a potluck Sunday. And my dad said, hey, this is our next church. And he eventually became the pastor there. And I think it's, 17 years or something like that he's been the pastor there. So being plugged into church, being plugged into music has been a huge part of my life. My dad had a construction company for a number of years, so I started working with him when I was a kid. And that's been probably one of the biggest things that people have talked to me about is just my work ethic. One of my previous jobs, that was one of the biggest things for my supervisor was just my work ethic and just keep going. And like, even when it's rough, we'll just keep going until the job's done.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were homeschooled and all your siblings were homeschooled.
Yeah.
Your mom obviously was the homeschooler teacher?
Yeah, we were part of a co-op.
Okay.
So it was a group of families that would get together once a week.
Yeah.
And we'd take tests, we'd get homework, we would do state testing every few years.
Yeah.
Always scoring higher than all of the public school kids.
Yeah. I believe that too, for sure.
Yeah. It definitely allowed for learning that work ethic, being at home. We're not in a school, we're not in a classroom 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
Or however long that's supposed to be. Played t-ball as like a 5-year-old. That's my only sports.
That's what I was going to ask you is, did you play sports? But so t-ball.
Yeah, t-ball I played 3 seasons. Okay. So I don't remember like any of it other than trying to hit a home run.
Yeah.
Because I was told if I hit a home run, then we could get ice cream. So I tried that.
How'd that work out?
Never got ice cream.
Never got ice cream, but you tried.
I tried every time.
Okay, cool. What, so how did you, if there's, I guess, do homeschoolers get access to sports? Can you play at the local junior high, high school, middle school, whatever?
Yeah, my oldest brother did basketball.
Okay.
And I mean, he's like 6'1", so and I'm like 5'6" or 5'7". So there's a variation of heights in our family. Most of my siblings are tall.
Okay.
Me and my sister were about the same height,
Okay.
but everybody else is like 6 foot. I had a number of friends within our homeschool group that did football or did track, just did other sports, and you can get plugged into all those things. I think it takes a little bit more work because you're not at the school.
Yeah.
So you have to, go wherever you're at. Like us being in Mahama, the closest place would have been Staten, so it's a 15 minutes. Doesn't seem like a long drive, but it's a big commitment for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So playing t-ball, I mean, I didn't do a whole lot other than that.
Yeah. But you liked music. Music was your thing during the growing up years. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did piano. Was a really big thing, kind of got me started in music, and then bass and acoustic guitar and saxophone, and taught myself clarinet and mandolin and ukulele.
Dang.
So my son loves the ukulele. He picks it up and he tries to strum, and he stomps his foot.
Come on.
So he's got some beat. He's got some beat. I don't want him to get into drums because that's a little too loud. Like you can take a ukulele outside. That's fine.
Yeah. What would you say would you say your favorite instrument now is bass? Is that what you're saying? Or is that the easiest?
I would say that's the easiest. It's a lot of fun to do.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to play by yourself. Like if you're playing acoustic guitar, you can, you play worship songs, you can play any other kind of song. With bass, it's just kind of one note at a time. Yeah. There's not a lot of like filler sound with it.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a good question for you. Growing up, you were in church like a lot of us were. Mm-hmm. When did you accept Christ as your Savior that you actually knew? Not mom and dad said do this, but you actually knew. What's that look like?
I think I was like around 6 at VBS.
Yeah.
Kind of like a lot of kids growing up. It was a VBS thing.
Okay.
I was the first one in my sibling group to be baptized. And I was baptized. I'm the only one of my siblings to be baptized in a church. So everyone else, it was always like the church picnics that a lot of them got baptized at, and got baptized in the river, which I was a little jealous that they got to be baptized in the river, and I was baptized in a church. Like, I don't know, I thought it'd be cool to be baptized in the river. Yeah.
It's cool. Okay, so you're 6, and a lot of kids, just like my daughters, I think they accepted Christ at like a Polk County fairgrounds, or they both have a different story early on, but at some point in time, it has to become your own faith where you stop watching mom and dad and it becomes your own. Was there a period of time where you remember where it became your own?
I think it took a long time for it to become my own because it was just church. It was the thing that we did with a lot of people. It's like that. You grow up in the church. You're at church every Sunday. You eventually get put on the worship team. You're there for a youth group. You're there for all of the things. So it's just kind of like the thing that you do. Yeah. And I think it took a number of years for it to become my own thing. Yeah. And even in that, it's kind of like a roller coaster of like, I'm on a good level with God, and then it goes down, and then I, start trusting my own strength and doing my own thing. And then it turns in like, oh, well, I can't do this anymore on my own. So I think it was probably more towards high school that I probably started making it more my own. Okay. It was kind of that uptick before coming back down and relying on my own strength again.
We're guys, we love to do things on our own, don't we? We're tough,
Yeah, for sure.
Until we're not.
Yeah.
Okay. So you get through high school. You talked about military, the Black Rifle supports military and stuff. Mm-hmm. Were you ever in the military? Anybody in your family in the military? What makes you want to support the military?
My grandfather, my mom's dad, was in the Army. He was a pilot in Vietnam. He was a helicopter pilot. Nice. And I always kind of heard like, oh, he was in Vietnam, and never really heard his stories of like what he did. Yeah. He's still alive, and I love talking with him when I can. My dad's dad was in the Air Force, I think. He passed away before I was born. And so I never met him, but apparently my dad says that I remind him of his dad because we're built very similar. Short, I think is what he means.
Short and stocky.
Yeah. But my brother served in the Navy, and I had one of my best friends growing up join the Navy.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Did you ever want to go military, or is that something you never wanted to do? You ever think about it?
I did want to join. At the time, I've never had it officially tested, but what I believe I had a minor heart attack back when I was like 18 or 19. And since then I've had some like heart palpitation stuff.
Okay.
And then finding out after that there is some heart stuff in my family. And I decided to just work instead of going military.
Yeah, yeah. I bet that was scary, whatever happened to you when you were 18, some heart issues. What was the issue there?
I just felt like a pain in my chest. I was sitting at home and I was like, oh, this just feels weird, like tightness. And then my left arm started to go numb. And then I'm like, oh, I think I'm just going to go lay down because did landscaping at the time, and landscaping, you get pretty sore from pushing a lawnmower and pulling weeds. And I was like, oh, I think I'm just going to go upstairs and go to bed. And then my left leg almost gave out on me a couple of times going up the stairs. And then from that point, I'm like, well, I'm going to cut back caffeine. Maybe that's a trigger. And finding out that caffeine is a trigger for heart palpitations and nicotine. So I never smoked cigarettes, just stayed away from tobacco.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had some stressful situations that kind of like in the past, now I don't have like any issues that I know of.
Praise the Lord, man.
Yeah.
That's pretty scary though, for sure.
Yeah. Thinking that like you feel very mortal at those points. I'm just like, I'm not invincible. As like a kid, you think you're invincible until something happens and you're like, oh, I could die.
Yeah. A lot of times that doesn't hit us till we're 40 or 50 or 60, where you realize, oh, I could die. But you actually, at 18, like, pretty scary. I am mortal. I'm not immortal, and I could die.
Yeah. And around that time too, I don't know how personal the podcast gets.
As personal as we want to make it.
Okay, cool. Go
personal, please.
Okay.
That's what we want to hear.
So back in 2012, I was dating this girl, and she broke up with me.
Yep.
And looking back...
So 2012, just for a frame of reference, we're in 2024.
Yeah, so
that was 12 years ago. So you were, what, 18?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was around that time. This girl broke up with me, and I thought that it was the end of the world. Like, I think we had talked a little bit about beginning of the podcast. We think that back in high school is like, you don't think of the future. You don't think of like, oh, well, I'm not going to hang around my friends anymore. I'm going to date somebody else. And like, this isn't it.
Yeah.
And so I thought that this girl that I was dating, I was going to marry, because I was just like, oh, well, we're dating. So we'll get married. We dated for like 2 years.
Yeah.
She broke up with me, and I thought it was the end of the world. And I thought that there was no reason to live anymore. And a couple of different times, I closed my eyes while I was driving down the road and just slowly veered into the other lane of traffic and waited for an impact that never came. And when I opened my eyes, I was back in my lane. And that happened 2 different times. And after the second time, I realized God probably has a purpose for my life. And I'm supposed to be here for some reason, even though I don't know what that is.
It's so interesting, as a believer, you believe in Jesus, you know the plans that he has for you, or at least we're going to heaven. But living this life sometimes is difficult. And there are moments where it's like, you know what? It's too painful.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was a really painful time of your life.
Yeah. And I think it was probably after that we had talked about God became more real, probably around that time too. But it also shut off a part of myself that took me 10 years to realize that had been turned off. This emotional side of when heightened emotions come, then my body goes into a fight or flight, or I just shut down. And it took some conversations after I had gotten married that, oh, I've got some actual trauma, and I've got parts of me that are broken. And my wife, we used to joke that my wife held the emotions for both of us. because she was a lot more emotional than myself. And then I understood why. That when heightened emotions come, then it was like going to try to kill me. And so I would just turn off. And so we would get into heated discussions. This is jumping way forward.
Yeah.
But get into heated discussions, and internally I would just turn off and say, this is not safe. And like, your heated emotions are going to kill you.
That's interesting, man. Okay, so you were suppressing your emotions, really.
Yeah.
And you were saying, oh, your wife has all these emotions, but in reality, you and I are guys, we have emotion as well. We just don't want people to know about it. Or we're unaware that we actually have emotions.
Yeah, and for me, it would just turn off and be like, it was like a defense mechanism or something. And it was just a switch. It was not intentional. It was very subconscious. And it would just be a switch of this, you're going to die. And so I would just stop.
Probably frustrating for your wife. You guys are in this debate or heated discussion, as you say.
Yeah.
And then you just stop. And so, so how'd you guys reconcile that conversation when you would get to that point? What would happen then?
It was probably around 22. So it was like 10 years. And we kind of started, and then I think she had asked the question of like, well, why do you clam up when we're talking and things get heated? And I think we slowly walked it back to in 2012 when I allowed my emotions to control what I was going to do and try to kill myself. And so that's kind of and I was kind of able to identify at that point of where that was coming from, which was it felt like a really short conversation to be able to identify it. Like I should have been able to identify it 10 years prior, but I didn't talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
It was something that, I attempted and was like, all right, well, I'll just move on because I'm supposed to be here. I'm just not going to talk to anybody about it. Yeah.
Have you ever heard the saying, emotions are great servants, but horrible masters? And so I think we all have emotion, good or bad. I'm happy, I'm mad, I'm upset. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Until they become master of your life. And
oh, for sure.
So learning how to open up about that, that's interesting. I'm a guy too. I have, suppressed emotions, and I always thought my wife was the emotional one. Realized I'm just suppressing my emotions.
Yeah.
But in reality, I have the same emotions she has. And it took me a long time.
They're same, but they're different because, we're men and they're women. So there is a difference in how we feel joy, how we feel excitement, how we feel sadness and all that stuff. So
yeah, good point. Okay, so you get out of high school, you graduate, you're probably working. How do you meet your wife? How'd that all come about?
So I graduated in 2012.
Okay.
Started doing landscaping and worked at that company for like 3 years, and then worked for my friend's ornamental tree company for a summer, and then went on a road trip to Texas with a friend of mine. And I think, Megan and I, we met in 2014, and she was dating another guy at the time. She got invited to church by my brother. I was on staff there, and that was my hipster time. So I had the fake glasses, I had the man bun, the flannel, driving a 69 Beetle.
Come on.
Yeah, I was the guy.
You were cool.
And there was just something about her. As soon as I met her, I was like, there's something that's going to happen between us. I don't know what it is, but she's beautiful and she's amazing.
Yeah.
And we started dating in 2015, and I was a rebound guy for the guy that she just broke up with. So that took me, it was a long time before I found that out. She broke up with me after 2 months, and on Christmas Eve of 2015.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah. And then...
you've been here before too. You probably felt some of those emotions again.
Yeah. And then after we broke up, we kind of went through a dating phase of getting to know each other better, instead of just like, oh, well, we like each other, we're going to date. And we went through a phase of getting to know each other over 4 months. And then we're like, oh, I think we want to start dating again. So we dated for 2 months, and then she broke up with me again. And I was just like, God, what is going on? I know that this is people use the term "my person."
Yeah.
This is like, I know that this is the person that I'm supposed to be with.
Hmm.
And then I just gave it to God, and I was at a youth conference because I was on staff with our youth group. Went to a youth conference and just praying about it. And I'm like, God, I'm done. I'm done feeling like toyed with, you know? And if we're meant to be together, then you'll bring us together. And I'm done pursuing. And then the next morning I woke up and there was just less like, I wouldn't say like a fire, but a fire that is like, no, this is the person that you're supposed to pursue. And so that was into 2016, and it was either September of 16. She was coming back from, I think it was some kind of 5K thing, and we were talking, and I'm like, I really like you. And she's like, well, I really like you. I'm like, well, I'm not going to date you just to break up in 2 months again. Like, this is going to be
This is the third time, so third time's a charm, man.
Yeah, like
so.
This is either going to make it or it's not.
Yeah.
And so we're like, well, we're going to do this. And 2 weeks later, I bought an engagement ring. Because I'm like, I know. Like, I just need to convince you that I know, you know?
I think, well, it sounds like to me, God was a part of this whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
You couldn't convince her. You just felt convicted maybe to pursue her, and she was the one.
Yeah. And then so it was just a few months later, Christmas Eve comes around again, and I'm like, I'm going to take back this day. So I proposed on Christmas Eve of 2016.
Dude, how cool is that?
So, yeah.
You own that day. You broke up with me last year, but not this year.
Yeah. So I want to be able to take that day back and not have this kind of terrible memory of being broken up with.
Yeah. I like that, dude.
Yeah. And then we got married in August of 2017.
What day in August?
August 12th.
Happy anniversary.
Thanks.
How many? You said 7 years?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And that was kind of a whirlwind of us getting married, getting our first apartment, her getting her job as a teacher.
Yeah.
So it was all within the same week. I'm just kind of like, we're just like, we don't know if we're going to get an apartment. We don't know if my fiance at the time was going to get a job.
Yeah.
So like we interviewed up in Kelso, Washington. I'm like, well, I can get a job anywhere. I'm not worried about that. Just kind of wherever God takes us.
Yeah. That's a great story, man. Was she a believer? I mean, did you know she was a believer? Did you guys go to church together? Is that how you knew her?
Yeah, so we met at church.
Okay.
Yeah. She became a believer in like high school.
Okay.
And she's the only Christian, even still today, within her family. There's like her grandparents, her mom, her brother, her mom's fiance. So it's very small. I say she's got a family. I have a clan.
Yeah.
There's like 36 of my family now with spouses and nieces and nephews. Yeah. So there's a pretty big difference of her size and my size.
Yeah. So you guys find yourself praying for family members a lot, just they would come to know the Lord?
Yeah. Especially living out on our grandparents' farm. That's where we're at.
Yeah.
So we're around her grandparents all the time.
Right.
And on our anniversary, we were talking about how do we not feed into the negativity, complaining about what's going on in the world. How do we be, and as cheesy as it sounds, be Jesus to people that not that they don't believe that there could be a God. It's just, I think her grandpa was Catholic at one point. But just how do we live out what God calls us to do? And how do we love people that only want to be negative? And there's a lot of good things. There's amazing things with her family. Her mom cares so much. When we had our son, we had to have an emergency C-section. And so my wife was laid up for quite a while, and her mom would come over like twice a week to help take care of our son, give my wife a break because I was working for another contractor at that time.
Yeah.
And they got pretty close at that time. And there's a lot of compassion that's there.
Yeah.
I just really wish that they knew Jesus the way that we do.
Yeah. You know what? Never stop praying. You know, that's the calling is that we would keep praying. It's our job to share the gospel. Mm-hmm. It's God's job to save the people.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep praying I'm praying for family as well. You know, we have family that they've heard the gospel, but they don't necessarily believe, and praying that they would one day believe the truth. So
yeah.
I was going to share the verse that I was thinking of. what Jesus said in John 8:12. Again, Jesus spoke to them saying, I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life. And God's called you to be light. He's given that light to you to go shine in the darkness. And so you just keep being Jesus. That's perfectly, it's well said.
Yeah.
So, all right. So you get married. You're married for a few years, and then you decide to have a baby because he's what you said 2.5 or okay. So you guys waited for a little while.
Yeah, longer than all my other siblings.
Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, my wife for a while didn't know if she wanted kids.
Okay.
And when we got married, she was a school teacher.
Yeah.
Her first year teaching was our first year of marriage. So that was a huge trial for both of us. Every single night was prepping for the next day.
Yeah.
And then lots of anxiety, Sunday nights for Monday.
Yeah.
The first year that she was teaching, she was told later on that she had the worst class in the entire school. And it's like, well, why would you do that to a first-year teacher and give them the worst people?
Yeah.
So, so she was around fifth graders and kids, and she was like, oh, I just don't know if I want kids. And especially in like this crazy world we live in now, we see so much darkness and so much evil, and like, where's the hope? What's the point of bringing a kid into this messed up world? But I'm like, I want kids. I want a legacy to leave. I want to be a father. Yeah. And it just took a lot of praying and for her to be comfortable with having a kid.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about just the pains of being pregnant, of having a kid, the emotional and financial toll of having a kid. Without insurance, we would have paid like $50,000 for our kid. Between the hospital stay, the C-section, the room, all that stuff, we're like, how the heck are we going to pay $50,000?
It's crazy, man. And to think my grandma had 14 children, you know, crazy times, right?
Yeah.
Thank God for insurance or whatever, man. But all right, let's move on. You're now a dad. What's your boy's name?
Ivor.
What do you want to instill in Ivor as dad?
Well, part of his name, Ivor, means fighter with a bow or archer. And so my wife and I, we both got tattoos. She's got a little bow on her arm, and then I've got this is a rune. It's a Viking rune that means yew wood, which bows were made out of yew wood. So I want to be able to instill into him to be a fighter for his family, a fighter for friends, not afraid to stand up for what he believes in.
Yeah.
My whole family, we were pretty much raised to fix problems and to be able to stand for what we believe in. And I really want to be able to instill that in him and how to love people the right way.
Beautiful, man. I mean, that's what we're called to do is, fight the way the Lord wants us to fight.
Yeah.
To protect our families and to love people.
Yeah.
Right? If we do all these things, we don't love people, we've kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. So, okay, we're going to talk about your business.
Okay.
General contractor. So you've done a lot of you've done landscaping, you worked for a general contractor for a while.
Yeah.
And then you started your own business. So let's talk about...
Well, so actually in between that, before high school, I did my own landscaping thing. Then I worked for an actual landscaper. Then I worked at an ornamental tree nursery for a summer. Then I got a job, which is a large chunk of my life for 5 years. I worked at a shipping department up in Woodburn at a hop farm. And it's kind of a funny story on how I even got the job. I showed up to the job interview in shorts and flip-flops because I didn't know it was a working interview. And I had just gotten back from Texas. Yeah. And had an interview on a Friday and started on a Monday.
Sweet.
And then within that, I worked the harvest, worked in the warehouse on the ground floor as just like a grunt moving boxes, and then ran the shipping department for 4.5 years for a multi-million-dollar company.
Dang.
Shipping hops from Alaska to New Zealand to South Africa to Germany to Russia, all over the place. And that was 5 years of my life.
Dang. In your 20s too, mind you.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was an interesting place to be because I don't like IPAs. So IPAs are very hops heavy. Mm-hmm. And a number of times the sales guys were like, you're in the wrong industry. You don't like this kind of beer.
Yeah.
The job's good though.
Right.
So yeah.
What kind of beer do you like?
I'm a stout and porter guy for the most part.
Dark
beer. I love Guinness. Sandy Ann Brewing here in Salem.
Yep.
Their Pirate Stout is a coconut stout. That's my favorite beer. It's just a good stout with a hint of coconut.
Okay.
So kind of like a pirate, I guess. But it's a really, really good beer.
That's awesome, man. Okay, so after that job, take us into where you're at currently today. So
okay, so I quit that job at the hop farm in 21, 3 years ago. And my friend, I don't know if you know Cody Fresh Hour.
I don't know Cody.
He's done some work. He's real estate and property guy.
Okay.
But he was like, hey, do you want to come work on my farm? I was like, sure. What does it pay? And so he's like, well, what do you want to be paid? I was like,
a lot.
Yeah.
That's a dumb question, but we'll take it.
Yeah. So I worked on his farm, clearing up his property for a month and, putting in some fencing and doing a bunch of trash runs because he bought a property. Then previous owners just had a lot of garbage. So I did a lot of work for him. And he was like, hey, have you ever thought about becoming a general contractor? Like, no. Why would I do that? He's like, well, you're pretty handy. And come to find out, he wanted a guy to do maintenance. So he wanted a licensed guy to be able to do maintenance for him. And I was like, well, I'll think about it. And he's like, well, I'll pay for your testing to do all of that. And so I'm like, okay. And what's funny about getting your contractor license is it's all the legal stuff. It has nothing to do with your ability to build anything.
Yeah, just legal stuff.
Which I didn't know that until after the fact, and I'm like taking the test and like did a little bit of studying and pre-test stuff, but I'm like, this is all like the legal jargon. So as long as you know the legal jargon, you can be a terrible contractor for building, but you can get your license and do all that stuff. So I thought there would be maybe like some kind of building test. Like, oh, you're going to put together this. How do you like cut a 2x4 or something like that? Something basic. But it was all the legal stuff. Yeah, it's kind of crazy to me that like anybody can get their license, and it's not a skill thing.
It's just whether you can pass the test or not.
Yeah, and I was terrible at passing tests, but they said I barely passed.
Yeah.
So
okay, so that was in 21.
Yep, in 21, got my license and tried to figure out a name. It's like, how do you like George Gulstrom Construction or GG Builders or something. And for some reason, the name, there was something to do with wood, like some kind of tree that I wanted to have in my name. I don't know why, but just kind of ended up doing Lost Oak Construction.
Lost Oak Construction.
Yeah.
Why the lost? What's that about?
I don't know. It's just like, I kind of like, maybe it was like a picture of like this like lone tree.
Yeah.
But so some people think it's Lone Oak, which I believe is a street in South Salem.
It is indeed.
And they're like, oh, Lone Oak? And I'm like, no, Lost Oak. So some people get me confused, I guess. And then there's White Oak Construction.
Okay.
And they're a lot bigger. They're based out of South Salem. They're a lot bigger than me. It's just me and my business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, as far as your business goes, what's the specialty that you do? Do you build houses, or you more remodel and do decks and fences and stuff like that?
Yeah, more remodel, decks and fences.
Okay.
I've worked on some ground up projects, houses, duplexes, and helping build the foundation and then building the walls and kind of going from there. And that's fine, but it's just a lot of stuff to know. It's a lot of checklist stuff that I don't feel like is really within my realm. And I'd rather focus on like, oh, we need a little bit of concrete right here. Or, oh, we need a new fence. Or like, I just wrapped up a deck in West Salem.
Yeah.
And it's a lot nicer to spend, a week and a half, 2 weeks on a project and not 6 months. And you're showing up and it's like, oh, this general contractor didn't show up or this guy didn't show up. So there's a lot less headache for me. Like, it's just me.
Yeah.
And so either the material's there or it's not.
Yeah.
So
you got to like that. Yeah, I get that. In lending, I'm a mortgage lender, so there's residential and there's commercial. Commercial loans can take 6 months to a year and a half to do. Residential, we're in and out in 30 days, man. So get in and get out. That's been my style too.
Mm-hmm.
But some people love that long-term stuff, but I know you could probably do it, but it's not really what you love doing. Sounds like.
Yeah, I tell people that my scope is I'm licensed and insured to build a house.
Yeah.
And I can also change a light fixture. So some people have thought, well, you're a general contractor, so you're like not a handyman.
Yeah.
Like, well, I do handyman things. Like you need like new door trim or a new door handle put on or a light switch. You want a dimmer switch put on? Like I can do that.
Everybody needs a handyman.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, everybody should have you on speed dial, George. Seriously. Like, hey, I mean, I've got challenges, from time to time on our houses and whatever. So.
Well, I even tell people like, even if you don't want to use me to do the work, and I've had a number of people that they're like, oh, we're going to go with somebody else. Like, cool. Then just let me know if there's anything I can help with. If you've got questions like, oh, well, I don't know about this contractor, or if you just want an idea of how to do something, I'm like, just call me.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you don't. But at least I just want to be available for that extra help,
Right. Dude, this is good. Well, we're getting to the end, close to the end of here. We've covered a lot of ground. I mean, I love that people get to know who you are, George. You're a good guy. But most of the time we walk around and we know people on a surface level. We know, oh, George is he's a construction guy, and that's all they know. But they never heard anything about how did George grow up? What was his childhood like? What's his wife like? What's his son like? Why does he do what he does? So that's why we do this podcast, because we want people to get to know who you are.
Yeah.
So would you say, is there anything that you want to share? I mean, I think we kind of went pretty deep on some stuff, but is there anything left on your mind that you'd love to share? Some, I don't know. Something.
Well, I mean, how much time you got? I was telling the guys this morning, because we have a men's group on Friday mornings, and I was telling them I was doing your podcast, and I was telling them a story. I met this guy, Trav Jones.
Yeah, I know Trav Jones.
And I was like, hey, man, can I come see your podcast studio? Because he was doing the Chair podcast. Yeah, man, come on by. So I came down there, and what turned into a quick look around his podcast studio turned into a 4-hour conversation of what God's teaching him, what God's teaching me. And so I didn't really know how long we were going to talk for.
Yeah.
I mean, you say if there's anything else. Yeah, there's probably a lot of things I can talk about.
Yeah.
But I mean,
how
much time is on the memory card?
We're going to wrap up we have typically about an hour. But
okay.
Where's God working in your life right now? Well, George, you've asked me to ask the question on the podcast. Ask the person, what's their greatest challenge they're going through right now? So, George, what's the greatest challenge you're going through right now? Personally, professionally, however.
My biggest challenge is being present, because my wife says that I'm a dreamer and I have a lot of goals. Outside of construction.
Yeah.
We've talked about Black Rifle Coffee, and I would love to open a coffee shop.
Yeah.
I would love to open an event space. I would love to teach people archery.
Yeah.
I'm getting back into archery. I would love to be a licensed firearms instructor to give people some training, just basic training on firearms.
Yeah.
And so, there's a lot of things that I want to do. There's a lot of challenges that I have, but I think the biggest challenge is just being present, turning off my brain, not thinking about work, not thinking about what the future has, but where I can be present with my wife, where I can be present with my son.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest for me.
So what are you doing to I know you're aware of it, right? Because your wife told you.
Yeah.
But what are you doing to do those things where you are intentional to be present with your wife and your son?
One of the things would be just putting my phone down once I get home. because it's always in our pockets. And if it's there, it's easy to check.
Yep.
But either turning it off and just putting it down. I turn it off at night oftentimes, unless I got to get up early because it's my alarm.
Yeah.
Which I should just get an alarm clock. That'd be a little easier. We're in a camper trailer, so it's kind of a tight space for like that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Just being, I think there's a scripture that talks about taking every thought captive and being able to notice when I stop being present and start looking at other things, like just future ideas, not like I'm wanting to be away from my family or anything.
Yeah.
Being able to catch that quickly, being able to recognize it, like, okay, these are thoughts that I can put in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So my notes in my phone are full of ideas of like, oh, I got to write this down real quick.
It's funny you say that because, I've got my notes section too. I've got, looks like 157 different random notes. You probably have more than that.
Oh, I turned my phone off. I think I've got like 400 something.
Okay, yeah.
So that's everything from material lists to grocery list to pricing out property that we want to buy or build on.
Yeah.
Or books to look up or all that kind of stuff.
Well, and to your point though, you're wired a certain way and you are a dreamer. You like to think future. You like to have goals. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as your wife is feeling like you are still making her a priority in your life.
Yeah.
That's my challenge too, is making sure. One thing I had to learn how to do is when I come home, I don't always do it, but the best thing I can do is turn my phone on, do not disturb, where I've actually I don't get any text or nothing. So if there's nothing, because if I think that there might be a text, I'm going to want to go look at it.
Yeah.
So just a transitional period, maybe an hour. Mm-hmm. And then it's kind of like that fight or flight. When I'm in work mode, I have a hard time coming out of work mode.
Yeah.
And so I have to transition. And so for me, that has worked. And so, but it's a work in process, so it's good that you're listening to your wife and hopefully paying attention.
Yeah. I sometimes just have to turn off my phone completely.
Yeah.
Because I have a number of people that if they text or call me, they can get through the do not disturb. Because you can set that on your phone. So like my wife is one, if it's on do not disturb, I can get a text message or a call from her. So if I'm in a meeting or something, I don't want anybody else to get a hold of me. I set those limits in the evening. So it's like 10 p.m. I think is when it turns do not disturb. It's just automatic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know how to pray for you.
All right.
It's a work in process, but the key is being intentional for sure. So, well, George, it's been fantastic having you on here. I think your desire is, Black Rifle, coffee, the event space, teaching firearms and archery. I think that's cool. What if that could take place by the time you're 35? Do you have like a vision of like, hey, by the time I'm X age, I want to be here? Is there anything wrong with that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that it's all in my head. I don't have anything written down. And I was talking with my mental health coach about that not too long ago about goal setting. And like, I know that I like to do construction, but I don't want to do construction forever.
Yeah.
It's hard on your body. I mean, moving deck boards and moving beams and all that kind of stuff. People do it for 20, 30, 40 years, and that's awesome. And I'll continue to do it. But I need to, sit down, write out those goals, and kind of set some semi-hard dates of like, hey, I would like to be at this place, whether it's a financial goal or it's a physical goal. And I've gone through seasons of working out crazy, and like we've talked about how like you get up super early and you're in pretty good shape. And I was for a long time getting up at 4:30 in the morning, working out for an hour. And I was in the best shape I had been since like high school. And then that slowly tapers off, and I give it a pass because I do construction. I'm like, well, I'm moving lumber, so that's like my weights. I'm walking. So like the job I just wrapped up, I was walking to the backyard, which is up a hill. I'm like, well, I don't need to work out because I've been doing this. And, well, there's a lot more working out that I can do.
Yeah. I think you're right, though. I think putting this stuff to paper, just the goals, it doesn't mean you'll reach them, but at least it's on paper. You can think about it and pray about it, and hopefully you get there at some point in time. So.
Yeah.
Well, brother, we're gonna wrap this up. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, they want some work done on their house, how would they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Best way would probably just be search Lost Oak Construction.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook, Instagram. In the process of debating if I'm going to do a website and just pretty much get off social media.
Yeah.
I believe my phone number is all over. It's on Facebook, and it's if you search Lost Oak Construction, it should pop up with either a Facebook or like a Salem business contact stuff. I'm based out of Dallas now.
Okay.
Since we moved, and most of my work is on this side of the bridge and the river. So, wrapping up a job up in Lyons. So that was like an hour and 15 minutes one way.
Dang.
A lot of podcasts.
Yeah.
So, 2.5 hours a day of driving for that. So I operate from the North Fork area to Dallas, down to Lebanon, up to West Lynn, kind of like wherever, within probably an hour-ish.
Yeah.
I haven't done any work out towards the coast. I wouldn't mind being out towards the coast from time to time, but
yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'll put your information in the show notes so people can reach out to you and keep you busy. But I want to maybe in 6 months or so have another podcast. I want to see your progress, what you're actually getting accomplished, because we've talked about this for a while. I think you're excited about this, and I get excited, man. I want to see you succeed. I really do, and it motivates me to see you want something. Like, it's not motivating when people go, I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
But it's really motivating to me when people go, I know exactly what I want. I don't know how to get there, or I don't know when. Well, write down some dates. Mm-hmm. If you could, would you? I mean,
yeah.
If you could do it in 1 year, would you? If it took you 10 years, would you still do it?
Yeah.
So, well, hey, let's wrap up. We're going to just close this one here. I just want to say thanks for listening each week. We appreciate you. Dad, I want to say thanks for listening every week, too. I think you're my number one listener, and I appreciate that. Love you. And just everyone else who listens each week, there's a verse that I was thinking of today. George, you brought it up. And it's 2 Corinthians 10:5. It says, we're destroying speculation and every lofty thing raised up to the knowledge of God, and we're taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. And so what you think does matter. So go out there, have a great week. We'll see you next week. And again, thank you for listening. George, thank you for being here as well.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
All right.